There's a mark stamped on the Glock in your nightstand drawer that tells you something the company doesn't exactly advertise. It's not the serial, it's not the caliber. It's a small code most owners have run a thumb over 1,000 times and never once questioned. And what it actually points to changes how you think about the most popular carry pistol in America. You've trusted this gun with your life. You've cleaned it, carried it, maybe staked your family's safety on it, and nobody ever showed you how to read what's hiding in plain sight on it. Let's fix that. Secret number 20. That mark is a date code, and Glock makes you work to read it. Here's the honest version, because the internet is full of wrong ones. The letter prefix on your serial number is not a secret calendar, and on most American-made guns it runs in sequence. 2 letters on the oldest pistols, then 3, then 4 as production grew. So the prefix brackets the era your frame was born in, not the exact day. The real birthday lives in 2 other places: a separate proof date code stamped on many barrels, where the first letter is the month, and the letters after it mark the year, and the little fired case envelope that came in your box. Read either one, or call Glock with your serial, and your anonymous pistol suddenly has a birthday. Most people carry for a decade and never bother. Now you've got no excuse. And the next 19 are where it gets good. Secret number 19. The man who built it had never made a firearm in his life. Gaston Glock ran a modest shop in Austria, turning out curtain rods and knife blades. Not rifles, not pistols. He bought a plastic injection molding machine around 1980, and somewhere in there he got the idea to build a polymer handgun. When his country went shopping for a new service pistol, he was not a gun maker with a name to protect. He was an outsider with a molding business and nothing to lose. The story goes that he had handled a service pistol seriously for the first time only months before he submitted his own design. He asked working soldiers what they actually wanted, then beat every legendary century-old arms house that showed up to that trial. Gaston passed away in 2023. But the gun in your holster is still pure outsider, built by a guy who did not know what was supposed to be impossible. So he just went ahead and did it. Secret number 18. Pull yours apart on the kitchen table and count the pieces. You'll land at right around 34 parts. That's the whole gun. For a pistol that armies and police forces around the world bet their lives on, that number is almost insulting, and it was the entire point. Fewer parts means fewer things to break, fewer things to clean, fewer things to fail at the exact moment it's caked in dust and you don't have time to baby it. The men who own one love to call it ugly. They love to call it a brick. They never ever call it complicated. Compare that to a pistol stuffed with a manual safety, a decocker, a magazine disconnect, and a parts list twice as long, and you start to see what he actually built. He didn't add features. He deleted them. On purpose, one at a time, until there was almost nothing left to go wrong. Secret number 17. There's no safety. No lever to flick down. No switch to forget about when your hands are shaking. People who don't own one think that's reckless. It is not. Glock built 3 separate safeties straight into the gun, one in the trigger, one in the firing pin, and a drop safety, and all 3 release in the same motion when your finger does its one job, then lock right back up the instant your finger comes off. They called it the Safe Action System. It was a deliberate, genuinely controversial bet that the safest gun in a real emergency is the one with nothing for you to fumble. Plenty of people screamed about it in the 80s. 40 years and millions of carries later, that bet aged about as well as a bet can age. Secret number 16. In the 1980s, politicians and newspapers tried to tell America this gun was invisible. The all-plastic pistol that would stroll right through an airport metal detector and put a weapon in every hijacker's hand. It made front pages. It made movie villains. There was real, loud, national panic. And it was complete nonsense. Your Glock is mostly steel by weight. The slide, the barrel, the springs, and the internals are all metal. And it sets off a detector like anything else ever has. Here's the part the company would never say out loud, even now. That hysteria was the finest advertising it never had to buy. The scare didn't kill the gun. It made the name a household word and put it in every movie. They couldn't have scripted it better. Secret number 15. Pick it up and it either feels perfect in your hand or it feels wrong, and there is almost no middle ground. That's the grip angle. The Glock sits at about 22 degrees, where a 1911 sights closer to 18, and that small handful of degrees has started more arguments than anything else in the handgun world. If you grew up shooting one school, the other one points high or low for you and feels broken. It isn't broken. It's just built around a different wrist than yours. And here's the quiet tell most people miss. The shooters who hate the angle loudest are almost always the ones who learned on something else first. Hand a brand new shooter a Glock 19 with no history in their wrist, and the complaints mostly disappear. The angle was never the real problem. 30 years of muscle memory was. Secret number 14. Look down the bore and you won't find traditional sharp-edged lands and grooves. Glock cuts the barrel with polygonal rifling, smooth rounded twists instead of cut corners. It seals the gas behind the bullet better, it can wring a little extra velocity out of the same round, and it tends to wear slower. But here is the secret most owners are never told, and it's the kind that actually costs people money. Glock's own manuals have long warned against running cheap, unjacketed lead reloads through the factory barrel. Lead fouling builds in that polygonal bore faster than you'd believe, and as it builds, pressure climbs right behind it. The fix is simple. Shoot jacketed ammo through the factory tube or drop in an aftermarket barrel for your lead. That isn't a forum rumor. That's printed guidance. Too many people learn the hard and expensive way. Secret number 13. The boring black finish is doing far more work than you think. The steel under that flat coating isn't merely painted, it's surface hardened, with a nitride process the old hands still call tenifer and the newer guns wear as NDLC. And it shrugs off rust and holster wear in a way that quietly embarrasses guns costing 3 times the money. Men have carried these things through entire humid summers, soaked in sweat, left them rattling in truck consoles, dunked them in salt spray, and pulled them out without a freckle of rust. The gun looks plain on purpose. It was never built to be admired in a glass case. It was built to be ignored, abused, and still go bang. That's the part the glossy, engraved, blued competition never understood. Pretty wins the gun shop display case. Plain wins the next 40 years in your holster. So before we get into the bigger ones, and the heaviest secrets on this list are still coming, take 1 second right now and subscribe. There's a new honest, no-hype breakdown like this every single day, and that subscribe button is the only thing that makes sure the next one finds you instead of getting buried. That's the whole ask. 1 second. Now let's get back to your gun. Secret number 12. There is no such thing as the Glock 19. There are now 6 of them, and the company changed the gun under you with barely an announcement each time. Generation 1 wore a simple pebble texture. Generation 2 added real checkering for grip. Generation 3 brought the accessory rail up front, a thumb relief, and those molded finger grooves on the front strap. Generation 4 added swappable back straps so the grip could finally fit more hands, a rougher texture, and a redesigned recoil system. Generation 5 stripped the finger grooves back off, added an ambidextrous slide stop, and quietly upgraded the barrel. And in January of 2026, Generation 6 landed. A rounded grip with no finger grooves at all, a flat-faced trigger, an extended beaver tail, a flared magwell, and a new direct mount optics setup. 6 versions of one pistol, which brings us straight to the next one. Secret number 11. Glock took the finger grooves off and then never put them back. For years, through 2 entire generations, every hand that didn't happen to line up with those molded Gen 3 and Gen 4 grooves was basically told to deal with it. That's the gun. Get used to it. Then Gen 5 quietly arrived with a smooth front strap, like the grooves had simply never existed, and not one word of apology. Gen 6 kept them gone for good and rounded the whole grip instead. That silent reversal is about as close to "we were wrong" as you will ever get out of this company. So if your fingers never sat right on a Gen 3 or a Gen 4, listen close. You were not holding it wrong. The gun was wrong. They fixed it. And they would much rather you didn't sit too long on the fact that it took them 3 generations to do it. Secret number 10. Here's the one that makes brand new buyers crazy. A lot of the men who know these guns best will pay more for an older one. A clean Gen 319 routinely holds its price right alongside the newest model on the shelf, and not rarely above it. No finger groove drama. The simplest version of the recoil system, and the single deepest aftermarket parts bin on the entire planet, because the world has been building parts for that exact gun for decades. And here is the kicker that just made it worse. Glock wound down mainstream Gen 3 production in late 2025. The supply of clean factory ones stopped growing. In most of the gun world, newer means pricier and older means cheaper. Here, old reliable is a literal market price you can look up, and it's been climbing. The savvy owner hunting a clean Gen 3 isn't behind the times. He's reading a chart the new guy doesn't even know exists. Secret number 9. When Gen 4 switched to a dual recoil spring assembly, the early production run picked up a reputation for getting picky with certain lighter loads, brass flying off to strange places, the occasional stutter that a Glock is never supposed to have. The internet noticed, loudly. The company quietly revised the part and carried on without ever standing up and making a speech about it. And here's the quiet kicker most owners never connected. When Gen 6 arrived, Glock walked the recoil system back toward a single spring again, much like the simpler guns from years earlier. Read between the lines on that one. So if you've got an early Gen 4 that likes to throw spent cases back toward your own forehead, hear this clearly. That's not your imagination. It's not your grip. And it's not your fault. It's a known chapter. The company would much prefer stayed unwritten. You just read it anyway. Secret number 8. Your magazines carry a generational story too, and almost nobody tells you. The earliest Glock magazines weren't even built to drop free, and when the gun later moved to a reversible, ambidextrous magazine release, the body of the magazine itself had to be recut to work with it. Most of it crossfits well enough that owners never give it a thought. Right up until the afternoon, a hand-me-down mag doesn't drop free clean the way the newer ones do. And they stand there wondering what's wrong with their gun. Nothing's wrong with your gun. It's a small detail. But it's exactly the kind of small detail nobody mentions when a buddy tosses you a spare Glock mag. Like every magazine ever made is identical, they are not. Check the floor plate. Check the cut. Secret number 7. Look at the slide. If yours has a small cover plate near the rear that pops off to show a machined cut underneath, you're holding the optics ready version, the one Glock built for the red dot era. On the Gen 4 and Gen 5 guns, that was the MOS, a system of swappable plates so you could bolt on the sight of the moment yourself. No machinist, no 6-week wait. It was a smart answer. But here's the part worth knowing. The newest Gen 6 guns ditch the plate stack for a direct mount system that seats the optic lower and deeper because the plate setup, for all its convenience, was always one more stack of parts between your dot and the slide. Either way, that little cut quietly turned the 19 from a pistol into a platform, ready for 20 more years of optics without you ever buying a new gun. And plenty of owners have that exact cut under that plate and have never once lifted it to look. Secret number 6. The cheapest meaningful upgrade to this gun is the barrel. And the joke is that almost nobody actually needs it. The factory barrel is genuinely good out of the box. But because the gun was built as a platform, dropping in an aftermarket or threaded barrel is a 5-minute job at the kitchen table with no tools and no gunsmith and no paperwork on the part itself. And that one swap is the door to everything else. A suppressor down the road, a bore that's friendly to the cheap lead ammo the factory tube hates, a touch more mechanical accuracy if you chase it. They engineered the gun so that the single easiest part to change is the one most owners will never touch in their lives. That's not laziness. That's a design quietly waiting on you for years. Secret number 5. Down inside the trigger group, there is a small part called the connector, and it is the single most important piece almost no owner can even name. It's the shape of that one little part and how smooth its working surfaces are from the factory that decides whether your trigger breaks like a clean light switch or drags like a stuck screen door. For decades, people who actually understand these guns have known that a careful polish of the existing parts, costing essentially nothing but an evening, transforms the entire feel of the pull. The famous 25-cent trigger job. Glock ships the trigger the way it ships it for liability and for factory consistency across millions of guns, not because that is the best the trigger can possibly feel. The good trigger was sitting in your gun the whole time. You were just never told which part to look at. Secret number 4. The torture test legend is real, and it is also marketing. And both of those things are true at the exact same time. These guns genuinely have been buried in mud, frozen solid in ice, dragged behind trucks down gravel roads, dropped onto concrete from a story up, and run filthy for thousands of rounds without a cleaning. And they genuinely do keep running. None of that is invented, but every legend that survives 40 years survives because somebody wanted it to keep going. The stories got told and retold around gun counters and campfires because they were flat out good for business. And think about what that quietly tells you. A company confident enough to let the whole world test its gun in mud and ice and never once flinch is a company that already knew exactly what it built. The legend was never a risk for them. It was a bet they'd already won back in the design room. Secret number 3. You've heard the cracked frame horror stories. Somebody's cousin's Glock split, so now the polymer's no good. Here's the honest version. It is rare. And when it does happen, there is almost always a reason sitting right behind it. Abuse, a wildly hot load, a hard and unusual life. For the overwhelming majority of owners running normal factory ammo through it, the frame will outlast their interest in the gun entirely. The fear gets passed around the internet 1,000 times more often than the failure ever actually happens. The very polymer that terrified people back in 1985 turned out to be one of the most durable things you'll ever put in a safe. The man who already owns one knows this in his bones. The man still thinking about buying one is the one who needed to hear it. Secret number 2. This gun barely loses money, and that is almost unnatural. Buy a used 19 in honest shape, shoot it hard for years, sell it down the road, and you'll very often get most of your money back. Sometimes very nearly all of it. In a world where almost everything you carry out of a store is worth half as much by the time you reach the parking lot, that kind of value floor is nearly unheard of. The flat black plainness, the boring, reliable reputation, the simple fact that millions are in circulation and everyone trusts them, all of it stacks up into a price that just refuses to fall. Ask anyone who's actually tried to lose money on a clean used 19 and struggled to do it. It is not the prettiest thing in your safe. It may quietly be the smartest single dollar in it. Secret number 1. And here's the biggest one of all. The Glock 19 was never supposed to be the star. The full-size 17 came first in 1982 and got the spotlight. The 19 showed up a few years later as the trimmed-down compact, a little shorter, a little easier to conceal, the sidekick to the flagship. And then it quietly walked off with the whole show. Not quite full-size, not quite subcompact. It landed on the exact middle ground that turned out to be what nearly every shooter actually wanted but couldn't name. It ended up riding on more duty belts, in more waistbands, and in more nightstand drawers than the very gun it was built to support. The perfect compromise was never the grand plan on a drawing board. It was the happy accident that the entire industry has spent 40 years trying and failing to copy. So understand what you're really holding. You are not carrying their flagship by accident. You are carrying the gun that quietly out-argued every other pistol in the building, including their own. That's not an opinion about a pistol. That's just what the sales numbers and the holsters of an entire country have been saying for 40 years straight. So here's the part I actually want from you. Go find that date code, check the barrel, check the fired case envelope in your box, or call Glock with the serial and drop your gun's real birthday in the comments, along with which generation you're running. And then the bigger fight, the one I want from the men who have carried more than one. The Glock 19, or the gun you would genuinely trust more in the drawer at 3 in the morning. Which one earned its spot, and why? Let's hear it. There's a new straight answer breakdown every single day, so subscribe, and the next one rides in.